Says the webinar is live.
Get a couple of minutes for the attendees to get in. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us. It's just after 1 o'clock in the East, and so that's the time that we had set up for this exciting webinar. On behalf of the National Center for the Prevention of Community Violence, I want to invite everyone that's joining us. I first want to offer an apology on behalf of our group that the first day did not work out because of technical difficulties. Fortunately, we were able to take care of that and maybe learn from the first time that we tried to launch this. This is sort of a history for us in our national nonprofit because this is the first actual webinar that we've hosted as an organization. So we're really excited, but there will be others coming up after this. We'll be sending more information out. We're glad that all of you joined us, and we're going to jump right into our process today because we have an exciting group of panelists and presenters, and we also are excited to be celebrating Act of Kindness Week, and that's all week long is Act of Kindness Week. And we had the original webinar set up for Act of Kindness Day, and that's why we figured we would just move it to Friday so that we could basically do it during Act of Kindness Week. I'm very excited about this, and I can tell you that we put a lot of time and energy in what we do at our National Center. For those of you who don't know, the National Center for the Prevention of Community Violence has been in existence for about 10 years. I actually founded and started the center after a 30-year public safety career in the state of Virginia, and which time I really learned a lot in public safety. One of the things that I learned is that incivility and the lack of kindness, which leads to violence, is a process and it's not an event. And today we're going to be really examining how that process works by building kindness and civility, not only in us individually, but in our culture and in our communities and our institutions. And we're just very delighted to present the pathway to do that. One of the things that I've always learned too, and you'll hear more about this in these presentations, is that we have to attack this in basically a systematic and a process, way. A lot of times we tend to really look at kindness and we want to just put real quick flash programs together. But at our center, we do not believe that flash programs in and of itself works. We believe that we have to adopt a full community process to change communities. And that's exactly what we stand for, and that's what we do. I'd like to just talk a little bit about and only add some comments before I introduce, our presenters today. 30 years of public safety have taught me a couple of things. One of the things that has taught me, and I like to share this when I do a lot of speaking, I've had the opportunity as one of, as Dr. Geller will also share, to write a number of books. And one of the things that I've learned throughout this process is that, I may not tell you how to be successful in a 1-hour webinar, but we can tell you how you fail. And that's really important because I think when you look at what doesn't work, then you can finally find what will work. And that's the way I look at what we've done as a society. A couple of things I like to mention. When I was thinking about this webinar and introducing it, one of the things that stuck out of my mind is, okay, as a society right now in America, where do we go from here? We have reached an all-time lack of civility in our society in a lot of ways. We are not our brother's keeper like we need to be. We basically, I think, we're trying to run a 6-cylinder car on about 3 cylinders right now when it deals with kindness and civility. So a couple things I want to mention before we move forward. Number one, I think in order for us to get to where we need to go and what we're going to talk about today, we have to stop blaming others for our individual actions. And I think we see a lot of that in our society, and people blame it on social media. They blame it on the media. They blame it on a lot of different things. They blame it on political parties. You know, it's like the Scarecrow and the Wizard of Oz. We can point both directions. It goes. There's plenty of blame to go around with this problem we're going to be addressing today. And number two, we got to understand that we've got to shift culture. We've got to do something to change the culture of our society. And that's only going to happen when we do something that's going to be long lasting and something that's going to be a part of our communities going forward. The other thing that I want to mention really quick is that we just celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, and this is Black History Month. And I want to point out that I've always been a study of some of the things that he said in some of his speeches. And one of my favorite speeches was obviously on the Mall in Washington, D.C. And people wanted to make that speech strictly about race. But I want to interject something that I think we need to think about today. Dr. Geller said the following words. He said, "I dream that one day my son and daughter will grow up in a world not judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character." And I want to say that we really have had a lot of dialogue about race in the last year in the United States. But what we have not had a dialogue about is character. And what we're going to be talking about today is how you change inner character for the better through kindness. So I can't be more excited about what we are doing. And I also want to leave this thought. What we're going to present here today is a strategic way forward. It is not something that is just, here today and gone tomorrow. The strategies you're going to hear today will be something that will be long lasting if they're applied in your community and your institutions. So we're very, very excited. I'm excited to have two folks joining me today that are going to be doing most of the speaking. I'm going to ask some questions. It'll be a question and answer type webinar, but I really am excited about this. The first person that I'm going to be talking to in a question and answer mode will be my dear friend and partner, Dr. E. Scott Geller from Virginia Tech. And let me tell you a real quick story about Dr. Geller and how far back we go. I had a daughter that was at Virginia Tech, and shortly after dropping her off, about a week or two later, she called me on the phone and she said, "Dad, you need to meet my psychology professor." And when your oldest daughter tells you need to meet a psychology professor, you're like saying, well, let me think about that. But she was a freshman in Scott Geller's psychology class. Scott has the opportunity to teach most freshman students at Virginia Tech and has been doing so for 50 plus years. And so she was just enamored with his presentation about human kindness and humanism and behaviorism and the things he'll mention in his presentation today. But what stuck out in her mind was a program called Actively Caring for People. And she said, "Dad, sometime when I close my eyes and I'm listening to Dr. Geller lecture, it's like I'm listening to one of your presentations when you give your speeches." She said, "You all think so well alike that I'd like for you to meet him." I did go to Blacksburg and I did meet Scott Geller. We were supposed to have a 30-minute conversation, but it ended up being about a 2-hour conversation. And what I found there was a man who was ingrained to make a difference in our society. And I really believed on that day, as I believe today, that if people listen to the value of what this man presents and the support that goes behind that from not only an academic perspective, but a passionate perspective, then we're going to make true change in our society. I believe so much in that I asked Scott Geller to be a member of our board of our national nonprofit, and he graciously accepted. And we have gone as far as to even write, one book together. And I wrote a foreword for a second book that Scott Geller has written, and he's written many books. But he is what I would call one of the nation's leading authorities on behaviorism and behavioral science. And I am so proud to call him my friend, and I'm proud to have him here on this webinar today. Following Dr. Geller, I'm excited that we're going to present one of his former students. And Chrissy Carmody and I connected just probably about a month ago. And we did so through Scott Geller. Scott Geller's, introduced me to a number of people who are on fire about actively caring for people in their communities. And after Dr. Geller answers some key questions for me, then Chrissy's going to join me and talk about how we go to the next step in our communities. So first of all, I'd like to say to both of you, welcome, and we're glad to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Dr. Geller, you and I have had long conversations on many nights about, what we're talking about here today. And we both have had such a passion to really drive this to the next level. And I'm so pleased that we're doing what we're doing today, because I think we're going to keep reaching out like this across the country with these webinars to let people know that we do have the answer. But I've got to really ask you, how did actively caring for people, how did this movement start? Give us a little history of it.
Thank you, Bobby. And wow, what an introduction. I'm emotional now with all of that. Let's back up, and I want to say one point. This is Active Kindness Week. Now, what is an act of kindness? An act of kindness is going beyond self-serving to other-serving. And I teach a class this semester called Positive Psychology. And the researchers have shown that when you help others, you feel better yourself. So helping others, showing kindness is good for you as well as the other person. Wow. Spread that around, folks. Listen to us as teachers. No, you're the teachers. We're going to plant some seeds in this webinar, but you need to teach others. And you've all been there. When you help somebody else, you feel better yourself. What if we became a culture where we were less self-serving and more other-serving? And we've had some poor examples these days in our culture that seem to be self-serving. We need to turn it around, teachers. So Bobby, yeah, we started actively caring for people after the tragedy. It was 2007, April 16th, never forget it. And on that day, 32 faculty and students lost their lives. And tragic day on our campus from a shooter. And then the shooter took his own life. So that's really 33 lost their lives. And after that event, I saw so much caring. People were calling me and sending me emails and, are you okay? We all cared after. And we started saying, what about before? What about proactive? As you call it, Bobby, a process. What can we do before these things happen? And so, I've been talking about actively caring. I wrote actively caring in an editorial for when I was editor of Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis back in 1991. And I introduced this notion of actively caring. We all care, but do we act on that caring? Do we do something about it? So my students said, hey, we have to do something about this. We have to do something so this will never happen again. So that's when the movement started. And we call it actively caring for people.
That's fantastic. And just again, y'all that are joining us today can see the passion that's already going behind this movement, and how that it's moving forward simply because, not just because of Dr. Geller, but a lot of people that have sat in this classroom and listened to how to really adopt this process. And we're hoping that that's going to catch fire across our country. But Dr. Geller, how can this science be applied to communities today? What can communities do from your perspective, from your academic teaching?
First, man, thanks for calling it a science. It is psychological science. This is not, and it is common sense too. When I say you feel better when you help someone, you say, yeah, that's right. So we started a movement, and I wear two wristbands, a blue wristband, Bobby's got it, and a green wristband. And this is what happened after our event. We said, we have to spread this around. We have to start spreading positive gossip on the internet. As Bobby said, there's too much negative stuff. We have to be positive. So here's the way it works. Call it STEP, S-T-E-P, S, C in act of kindness. Look for it. And when you see the act of kindness, the T means thank them. Wow, gratitude goes a big way on both sides. Again, when you give gratitude, you feel better as well as the person receiving it. So thank you. And you could just say thank you, or if you have a wristband, You give them this wristband. It says actively caring for people. And you say, join our movement. STE stands for enter the number of this wristband. They're all unique numbers. Go to our website, ac4p.org, and write what just happened. Put down the actively caring, the act of kindness that just happened, along with this wristband. And then the last letter of STEP, STEP, pass it on. Look for another act of kindness and give them this wristband, and they go through the process. What if we got a culture where people were just doing this, you know? And by the way, if you don't have wristbands, we actually developed at our university thank you cards. And the students, after the professor gives his or her lecture, the student goes up and says, thank you. And this is customized, of course, for Virginia Tech. And of course, because it's a science, we want to collect data. So the bottom of the card asks the person who gave the thank you card to fill it out. It says, what was the reaction of the recipient? And how do you feel after giving the thank you card? And I tell you, after hundreds of these, it's a feel good on both sides. So, and by the way, one more thing, there's a blue wristband out there. And Bobby's got this started. This is for police officers. We were going to give them green, and they said, oh, no, blue is for police. So they have their own website, Actively Caring for People Policing. And Bobby and I actually have a book, a manual that explains the science behind it and how do you put it in, why are we doing it? You know, often we give people rules, we say do this, but we don't give them the rationale, the reasoning behind the rule. And here, there's the reasoning. And as Bobby said, it is a science, it's psychological science. And again, there's a whole field called positive psychology that this connects to. You know, psychology have often thought of as negative, you know, what are the mistakes? What are the emotional issues? And yeah, that's true. The psychologist helps that. But what's the flip side? What can make us feel happy? What is happiness? And as I just said, part of happiness is actively caring.
One of the biggest honors, Doc, of my career is when we put that book together. When we wrote that book together, when I was driving down the road, I do a lot of people that know what I do as the executive director of the center. I get interviewed a lot. I was on a panel, and they were really pretty much putting down policing 100%. And so I was a little bit upset about it, being a careerist in public safety and law enforcement. And as I drove down the road, I said, how can I really make a difference in policing moving forward with this center and what we're doing? And so all of a sudden, it just occurred to me, why not introduce Actively Caring for People Policing as a community policing training program? And so I pulled over in a parking lot right away, and I called my friend Scott Geller, and I said, Scott, I got an idea. I said, let's take AC4P and take it to policing in America. And he was ecstatic about it. I said, well, I'll do it on one. You have to do one thing with me. You have to write a book for policing with me so we can introduce it to the policing market. And he just held up the book, and it's really Scott is one of the highlights of my writing. I can assure you that. So I really appreciate your support with that. Couple more questions, Scott, I got for you. You know, you call it pop psychology, which is always, you know, I find sort of humorous when you see a program that's thrown at, you know, something like kindness or addressing any type of negative activity. You know, we tend to throw programs out. How is this really different than other kindness programs that are out there? Because there's so much competition in this arena.
Well, first, you know, sometimes you think pop psychology is a negative term, pop psychology, but popular psychology. I wish the science would become popular. So I wish Actively Caring for People based on science would become popular. And so, yeah, you know what? I just went off. I forgot your question, Bobby.
Well, how is this different? If someone were to really look at, okay, we want to do active kindness within our school, or how would this be different than something else that they would choose, a program that they would choose to bring in?
Well, first, it can fit in any program or any process, right? You can include acts of kindness within any process. By the way, thank you for not calling it random acts of kindness. I mean, that's the popular term, random. Now, it might feel random to the recipient, but to the giver, it's planned. You got to think about it. I mean, it takes a little bit of courage to walk up to someone and to thank them. That's why there's probably not as much thank youing going on in our culture. But this process can fit anywhere. We reduce bullying, for example, in elementary schools with this very same process. We had a wristband, but it was done. The teachers came up with their own way of doing it. What the teachers asked the students, elementary school, from second grade on, asked the students to look for acts of kindness and fill out a 3x5 card. What did you see? What act of kindness did you see? And who was it? And every morning, the teacher would select three of those cards, actually, in this one class. It can be done lots of ways. And she read the cards, and she chose one card, and she gave this wristband to the person who did the act of kindness and to the person who read. We have them in child sizes, by the way, and for the person who, and so they were the actively caring hero of the day. At the end of the day, they have to turn it back into the teacher, and the next day they selected somebody else. And so the teacher was strategic in selecting which of the three to actually give the wristband to, so as to spread it around. And then she said, when everybody does at least one act of kindness, everybody gets a wristband. So my point is, that's just one way of doing it. And there's many ways of doing it. The whole thing is step, look, thank people, and record it somewhere. If you internet, wonderful. Spread it around.
One of the things that I think is interesting in your scholarship and your research and all that you've written about this subject, Scott, is the fact that it's not just sort of something that people do, but there are lessons that go behind it. There's actually, training and education that goes with it that you can be taught. And so one of the things I want to ask you about is, we don't obviously have a ton of time today in this what our webinar, but can you briefly mention the 7 life lessons that really make up this concept totally?
Yeah, there were 7. And by the way, I sat down one day, years ago, and said, of all this applied psychology I have known, what I want other people to pick up? What would I want the public to know? And these are the 7. Okay. The first one, and by the way, as I say them, this is not new. This is not rocket science. It's science, but you're going to say, yeah, I knew that. So, but then why don't we do it? First lesson, employ more positive consequences. Behavior analysts, or behavior scientists, as I call them today, we know that positive consequences go much further in influencing not only behavior, but attitude in the right way. So how simple is that? And of course, when you say thank you to someone, that's a positive consequence. When you give somebody a wristband, that's a positive consequence. So use more positive consequences. Second one is observational learning. Recognize how much you learn and how much you teach others through observations. Recognize that what you do is influencing others who are observing you. Okay, simple, right? Observational learning. But there's much research saying that almost everything we do was learned by watching others, and we have an opportunity to teach others. That's the second lesson. Third lesson is all about feedback. Practice does not make perfect. Only if you get feedback can you improve. So the second lesson is, how about recognizing the fact that we need to give people feedback, not only when they make a mistake, that's called corrective feedback, but it's supportive feedback. And of course, the next lesson is, give more supportive feedback than corrective feedback. We're back to positive consequences again, give people more support. And when you give corrective feedback, here's a big one, and why Bobby mentioned the word humanism. When you correct people, they make a mistake or you didn't like what they did, how do you correct them? Too often in our passion to make a change, we just tell people, you screwed up, do better, do this differently. No, no. You have to try to get buy-in from the other person, and that means you have to be humanistic. Ask them questions. Why did you do it that way? Is there a better way to do the task? I've been applying this in the field of safety, and that goes a long way to get people to coach each other with regard to safe and at-risk behavior. And so, is there a safer way? Is there a healthier way, a better way? When they say, there really is, and I really wasn't thinking, and the boss says, get the job done, and I made a shortcut. I'm going to try to do better. Oh, you didn't have to say a thing. When they come forth with their own treatment, their own commitment to do better. That's it. Now, I have to remind myself, well, another lesson is, and I kind of just came up to this through this conversation. You manage behavior, but you lead people. There's a difference between management and leadership. They're both good. We need to hold people accountable, and that's management. But leading people is getting their buy-in. Leading people is understanding, and our book explains self-motivation. How do you promote self-motivation? Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a supervisor, how do you get others to be self-accountable, self-motivated? We know. The science tells us. 3 C words. People are more self-motivated when they feel choice, competence, and community. That is when I believe that some of this was my idea. And that's what supervisors need to do, is teach in such a way or supervise in such a way that the other person provides some idea of their own. Competence. When we believe we're competent at doing worthwhile work, we're more self-motivated. How powerful is that? We all know that. So how do you help people believe they're competent? Supportive feedback. And the last word, C, is what we've been talking about here, community. A sense of relatedness, a sense of interdependency. We come into this world dependent on people to take care of us. And then we can't wait to become teenagers. Independent. I can do it myself. And some of us get stuck there. Can I help you? No, I can do this. We get stuck there, not realizing that if we help each other, we're back to gratitude again. We're back to acts of kindness, is helping others. How about this point? We're all different. Humanism again. Recognize our differences. And when you get different people working on a mission together, you know what you get? You get synergy. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts when people are working together. That's community. So when I believe that I'm doing this, not just for me, not self-serving, I'm doing this for others. Ooh, that's motivating. So there you go. That's self-motivation. And finally, let me say this. Hopefully some of I bet all of you have heard Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow, he came up with a hierarchy of needs. And he claimed that we first satisfy our physiological needs. And then after we have enough food, enough sleep, we climb the ladder and we're concerned about safety and security. And now we feel safe and secure. And now we worry about our social acceptance needs, And now I feel socially acceptable. And now we have our self-esteem. I feel good about myself. And then we get to the top. Some of you remember the top? Self-actualization. That's how it was taught for years. Now, it's been shown that you don't have to climb the ladder. You can be lacking food and still have connections with other people. But here's the point I want to make. Abraham Maslow changed his hierarchy before he passed away. 1970, said he was wrong. The best you can be is not self-actualization, which essentially means self-actualization. I've done it. I made a difference. I feel good about myself. He says the best you can be is self-transcendence. How about that? That's what we've been saying, going beyond yourself for somebody else. How about we teach that to people? So back to what's the benefits of caring, of acts of kindness? You reach the top of Maslow's hierarchy. You help somebody else, and all of a sudden, you're self-transcendent. And here's a point. You don't have to satisfy all these to get to the top. Mother Teresa, Gandhi, they sacrificed. They helped others before they were completely satisfied themselves. So that's essentially the principles that we teach. And now what Bobby and I do is we take those principles and we connect them to the work of police officers. And this book, we have one for schools, for school personnel. We have one for parents. There, thank you, Christy. So, and we take these principles and we customize them. And by the way, these books could be considered, it's just not reading. These books have exercises. These books have discussion questions. They were designed to get you to teach. They were designed for a group process of teaching each other these principles. And then, by the way, talking about our personal lives and how these principles relate. It's about talking about applications of the science.
That's excellent, Scott. And I tell you, you say a whole lot in a very few words, which I've always appreciated. And I've just got one more question before we move on. But so it's here, it's out there. People have learned it. What is your vision? The last question for you, Scott, is what is your vision moving forward with actively caring for people in our society?
Oh, my vision, by the way, wonderful distinction between a vision and a goal. Our vision is the ultimate. What do I really want? And our goal, we set our goals every day as to what we need to do to get there. Oh, so my vision is that the world understands and gets actively caring for people. Now, this has traveled worldwide. I mean, I get emails from all over the world. I have a TEDx talk that has now 10 million views, and I get people emailing me. And of course, that's my chance to introduce them to AC4P. We have that website. And we also have another website where we have these books are available at the website of Geller AC4P. And then Bobby's organization has a website. So the point is, we have the social media. We just don't have the media attention. Where's the White House calling on us and say, hey, guys, this is what the government needs. This is what we really need to promote. This is what police officers need. This is called community policing. This clearly is what we need. So my vision is that we will fill that need. But how do we get there? Those are the goals we have to achieve.
Scott, I want to say thanks. Again, it's so exciting always to be, to hear you and to be in your presence. And I certainly would know why students at Virginia Tech would just get so turned on after listening to your lectures and in your psychology class. And again, it's just an honor to have you part of our team and to partner with you. And we're your number one ambassadors out here with this, trying to move this to communities every chance we can. So God bless and thank you for being with us. And now I'm going to switch and go a different direction. There's somebody that's on the Zoom or the webinar today that was probably sitting in the same seat that my daughter Jolie was sitting in one day. And if you don't think that AC4P and what Dr. Geller has offered in this moving forward has its real, has left its footprint, let me introduce you to Christy Carmody, who's going to talk to us a little bit about when were you in Dr. Geller's class, Christy? I'm not going to put you on the spot for your age, but I think it's important for people to know.
No worries. It was the spring semester of 2002, so 19 years ago.
So that's when you first heard about actively caring for people at Virginia Tech. Tell us why you instantly sort of became, and why you're still these years later a believer in what you learned in the halls of that institution.
Yeah, well, sitting in Dr. Geller's, psychology was an elective for me. It was not my original major, and so most of the time you'll hear a freshman sitting in this class, but here I am. This is already my fourth semester into it, and I will tell you that like his class completely flipped me. And you never like to change majors as a junior in your first semester of a junior, but that's exactly what I did. I changed my major to psychology because of Dr. Geller's class, and then the rest is history, because that information that he puts out and that he's putting out right now in this science, it sounds like common sense, but it's really, really, really good stuff. That semester, interestingly, was the semester after 9/11. So Virginia Tech and the whole world at that point, the whole country especially, was certainly still in an actively caring for people mentality. Immediately after all that, I was very blessed, though, growing up, to have access to community service and community service organizations. And through my school and through my church, was able to do stuff as a young adult and a child, helping others, especially when we went into the inner city of Philadelphia and so on. So when I went to college, I didn't know anybody. There wasn't anybody from my high school that went there or anything. So the first thing I did was I found a community service organization. It's Circle K International. It's the collegiate version of Kiwanis International, that's dedicated to changing the world one community and one child at a time. And I will tell you that group of people, and just surrounding myself with those people, and those people with that mindset and that vision, and that completely just changes you from seeing the world as a pessimist and somebody or someone who just thinks the worst of people, to genuinely being an optimist and being someone who like knows that there's good people in this world. Our world, listen, the media, we like clickbait. We like things that people click on a lot. Of course, the stories of people not caring for each other always get more clicks. That's just the nature of us, of humans in general. But I will tell you, pro-social behavior already exists, and we just need to do a better job of calling attention to it. And that is exactly what actively caring for people does. And so that is my ultimate, hope with all of this, is that we can bring attention to the mass majority of the world that genuinely is actively caring for people. And that is how we spread it. And, just like Dr. King says, we cannot drive out hate with hate. Only love can do that. That's exactly what this is meant to be. And I will tell you a story personally, why over the last year, this has kind of catapulted me into it. And of course, a lot of everything that's happened in the news and in our world right now, from racism and caring for people with the pandemic and our political division that's going on right now, is part of it. But I have little kids. My a son was a kindergartner last year, and before the pandemic, of course, they were in school. I don't know if he was 5 or 6 at the time, but he's right on that cusp. And there was a couple days in a row where he woke up complaining of a stomach ache, and he just really did not want to go to school those days. And I said, okay, you know what? Go ahead and just try. If you're generally like, see after you eat, see after you've been there for a little bit, see how you're feeling. If you're still feeling unwell, you could go to the nurse, be happy to get you home. He never did, I never did get a phone call for those days. But the third day of driving into school after him saying this in the morning, we were about to make the left turn, which is the last left turn that you're close, right? You always know, like one turn, you're close to wherever you need to get to where you're going. And I see his eyes welling up, and I'm like, whoa, okay, something's going on here. Pulled over. If we're late, not a big deal. What's up, buddy? What's going on? Talk to me. How can I help? Like, what is happening? And all of a sudden, that's when it comes out that, some kids were teasing him at school. And I mean, listen, they're kindergartners, like to be expected, right? I mean, it's part of the age, you know, they're going to have little teasing moments here and there. But especially when you have a child that's pretty sensitive to it, like, wow, like it's causing him physical pain. Like those butterflies in his stomach are causing him physical pain. And so right then we knew we had, there has to be something that can be done. And it wasn't a matter of, you know, of course, to send the teacher an email and say, hey, what's going on? Like, how can we help this? This is the list of things that he told me, things like that. And what we came up together with, and she has plenty, our kindergartner teacher has been doing this for decades. She said we need to call attention to that kindness, to pro-social behavior. And especially for my son, it was most important for him in those moments to, instead of focusing on the kids that were being, you know, a little bit teasing and picking on him and bullying, focus on your friends that are helping you. Focus on your friends that are there for you when you're starting to get a little upset. He was up in a tree one time and there were two kids that were just blocking his way down, and you could feel for a 5-year-old all of a sudden to have that fear of not being able to get down or something. But one of his friends came over and said, hey man, you know, give me your hand, I got you. Focus on that. And that is what actively caring for people is doing. And I will say, I was actually on a Zoom chat with my Kiwanis Club the other night, and one of my fellow members works with youth a lot, and she actually says that a lot of the after a lot of the anti-bullying assemblies, it actually seems to make it worse, because they have a controlled mentality about that. They have a negative aspect of it, and they feel like they're being forced to do something. It's because we're so focused on saying, don't do this and don't do this and don't do this. We're not focusing on telling them what they should be doing and how they can be, you know, what they should be focusing and so on. So pro-social behavior already exists. We just need to do a better job of calling attention to it. And it is not just, especially for my son, because hopefully I'm raising him so he's never the bully. But for my son especially, it's not just helping him not be the bully, it's helping him be resilient to the bully. And I think across the community wide, it's not just about getting people to not be violent, to not be, you know, angry. It's teaching people to be resilient if they do see that. And that is huge when it comes to having it full circle and not letting a lot of these negative aspects of the world take over when they do.
Wow, Chrissy, that's pretty powerful. I got to say, that's incredible. Thanks for, you know, sharing those thoughts, especially as a mom and a parent, and how it really relates. You know, what we're talking about here today doesn't only relate into the schools and into our law enforcement agencies, but it's in our homes. And really, you're right. That's where that's where it starts. That's where the training starts, and that's where the application has to happen. And the other thing I like that you said, it's you know, these one-stop assemblies where, you know, people come in and tell, you know, young people what to do. It's, you know, it's not about managing their behavior. It's about teaching them to self-manage their behavior. And that doesn't happen in one event. It doesn't happen in one presentation. So that's why this systematic approach to what we need to do to change that climate is very important. You know, as a parent, you know, and a community member, and I know you're involved in Kiwanis, you mentioned that, you know, what can people do to embrace this though? I mean, it's something that could be, we think it could be easy, but it is a change of culture for a lot of people. So what can people do to embrace it even within their own family?
I will tell you, I mean, one of the biggest hurdles that we need to get over, and the first hurdle that you need to get over, is to have individual buy-in to it. And so listen, to everybody who's out there listening right now and who's listening in the future, just by you showing up and listening and learning about it, like, you are doing your part in getting this rolled out into the system. As a parent, there's a lot of different ways you could do it, but just to bring the wristbands back into it, I've currently have 3 wristbands on me. I actually have a whole bulk order coming directly from the factory at some point, but I have a family of 5, and we have 3 wristbands, and what we do is we just pass them throughout the house, and this way little kids can be a little bit, you know, challenging at times. 3 wristbands make sure that there's not just one person without one. So you never want it to be competition. You actually want it, you don't want it to be independent, you want it to be interdependent. We want to make sure that we're working together. So what we do is we see something that, you know, your sister did that's, you know, really nice, or something that maybe dad did, and we say, hey, thank you for, you know, actively caring, you know, at that moment. Thank you for being nice. Thank you for sharing, whatever. And we pass it on. And what we do is we actually keep a tally of all the times the wristbands got passed around. And then at the end of the week, see how many we got. And hey, let's try to beat it next week. So when you beat it next week, then all right, let's have, you know, Sundays on Sunday or something. Let's have a little celebration for beating it. And sure, you have that little reward at the end, but I'll tell you, when, you know, and Doc talks about this in his books, we talk about intrinsic internal rewards of just feeling good about doing that versus external rewards. And this is what that system's about. It's about really helping the intrinsic rewards, you know, come to light. So that's a good way of doing it within the home. Never underestimate the power of that observational learning, like lesson number 2 of Doc's. Seeing is believing. Actions speak louder than words. You've heard all of that before. But when you have the power of parents and grandparents and siblings and nieces and nephews and next door neighbors and the cashier at Target, when you have these people, you know, just single-handedly, you know, coming together to help shape each other's, that's so important on such a small scale. We think about these things on larger scales in schools and police and communities, but that small scale is where it's going to start and where it's going to spark and where it's going to take off from there. I had a cashier at Target the other month give my 2-year-old some stickers. I mean, just, you know, like how nice was that? Just a small little gesture of saying, you know, hey, sweetie, you want something fun to play with, you know, and that goes a really long way. So, so especially getting it involved in just your local, you know, core group of people. But when it comes to the community, the benefit that we have is that most local communities already have some sort of established, you know, community service organization within them. I'm of course quite biased towards Kiwanis International, but there's several other ones. There's also social clubs. If you think the Elks and the Moose lodges, the VFWs, the Knights of Columbus, all of these other organizations, they're already out there that have a sense of community. So by accessing those communities and those groups, you're already winning half the battle because you're already getting into into people that have that like-mindedness of coming together and doing nice things for each other. So focus on that type of stuff. And of course, the NCPCV has a framework for AC4P clubs and a lot of other resources of how we can reach out to the community that way as well. So reaching out to the National Center for Prevention of Community Violence in order to kind of come together and do that. If the framework is there, if you build it, if it is there, people will find it, and they will find it when they're most motivated about it, which is good. So it's important to have, you know, that framework there in place so that people will come to it when they find it. Don't get discouraged over, you know, little moments where things ebb and flow and some people forget about stuff and don't seem as active. They'll come back as long as there's a dedicated core group of individuals, you know, in there. You've got it. So each of you who are listening to this right now, you know, if you get passionate about it, there will be people who follow.
Doc, I see that's so, again, once again, so powerful, Chrissy. I see, Doc, you wanted to make a comment. You were so excited with your former student. I can already tell, you know, you might have to get another podium in the hall at Virginia Tech and put her on with you, I think. So did you want to make a comment, Doc?
Well, several things. First, Chrissy's exactly what we need, man. We need people out there talking. And she mentioned pro-social. I didn't even use that word, but that's the academic word, pro-social behavior. But I want to get back to what she said. The simple thing we could all do, focus on the positive. Talk about with her kids, talk about the positive, whether it's a wristband or what. How about sharing the good things, like the case Chrissy told us about with her son? Positive. What are the good things? There are people helping you. There are good things, but through the media, we're seeing the negative side. So we have to fight that. We have to fight that, and we can fight it with our everyday conversation, everyday interaction with people. Powerful. We need more of that. More people talking, teaching. It's clear that she's got the knowledge. Now we teach others, and they get it, and we pass it on.
It's so exciting. It almost welts up inside me just to hear both of you talk, and knowing the world that I came from in policing and seeing all the negative sides of society. I really was so excited when I finally learned that there was a pathway to get beyond that, and that pathway is based on science. It wasn't something that people were just trying to throw at you. There is, we're so excited as an organization to be, ambassadors for actively caring for people in this country. And, as Chrissy said, we do have training. We can provide training for schools, and especially for, police departments, education, as Dr. Geller says. We will provide, we can provide. And it's not impossible to get your police departments involved. I want to say that the state of Florida actually adopted actively caring for people policing as an official community policing training program for their officers. And at one point, we had about 18 or 19 departments on board. The future is going to be bright for us because we're a team, and we're going to keep talking to this, and we're going to keep other webinars going. I know Scott, you and I have talked about the next one would probably be about policing. We want to be in the middle of policing reform in America because we think this will definitely help. And as we're reforming how we're going and training our police officers, and then schools, when we get back to be in-person learning, hopefully sooner than later, how this can really impact the campuses throughout the country. And so we're really looking at how we can approach schools and communities. And so I'm going to let both of you give some final thoughts before I wrap it up today. And Chrissy, I'll start with you.
I think one of the big things is when you do understand the science behind it, you will become a believer in it. So Dr. Geller's TED Talk, which deservedly has over 10 million views, is a fantastic place to start. It's a well spent 15 minutes. I put the link in the chat box for anybody that wants it. You can, of course, Google it. It comes up right away. But that's a really great place to talk. He has really wonderful resources, especially with the books for schools and policing, but the one for parents is extremely well written and extremely well written for anyone that doesn't think they have a science mind. So it's meant for parents, not so much as an academic manual, which he does very well with. He has a couple of other really good ones that goes right into the Cliff Notes version of the 7 life lessons that he talked about, which kind of just get right to the point of where we go, and then a nice little 50 lessons to enrich your life workbook as well that goes more into it. So even as people look into being life coaches and self-care folks and so on, this is a great place to go. But I think that's a chunk of it is genuinely believing in the system first, because when you believe in the system, you're gonna take it, you're gonna take it places. And just like I said, actions speak louder than words. Get out there, join a club, form a club, and look for people that are like-minded, because they're gonna they're gonna help you through it.
Thanks, Chrissy. Thank you for taking your time today being with us. And I tell you what, you definitely learned at Virginia Tech how to go to the next level. So we appreciate you being with us.
No, thank
you. Scott, any final words?
Just wow. You know, I've completed I'm in my 51st year at Virginia Tech. I'm 10 years older than any other faculty member now in our department. And people are asking me, when are you going to retire, Geller? I mean, you know, you're way past retirement. And you know why? It's people like you that keep me going. When I, you know, I wrote an autobiography not too long ago, and the title of the chapter is Driven to Make a Difference. And that's really what we're all here for, to make it a positive difference. And when I hear Chrissy and Bobby, when I hear you respond to the stuff that I've taught, that keeps me going, man. And I want to, who knows, there might be one more student, one other person that we can teach. And not just me teaching, all of us can be teaching. And I want to say one final thing. I mentioned this to Bobby the other day. Our language seems to be so on the negative side. How about the term post-traumatic stress? Post-traumatic stress. What if you flipped that and talked about post-traumatic growth?
Love it.
What if you just, you know, with what have we learned from our mistakes, from our tragedies in our lives? What are the, and again, as we said here, we had a tragedy, April 16th, 2007. And yeah, it was awful. And it caused, it's not really stress, by the way, it's distress. Stress is good. Stress means I got things to do. It's distress when we feel a lack of control. But what if we focused on how we turned that around and what's happening that inspired us to start a movement? And it wasn't only me, it was the students. It wasn't me. I was just part of it. It was Chrissy and others. And now she's got wristbands and she's going to spread it around. So it's the positive side.
That's awesome.
I'll
Go ahead,
mention
Chrissy.
too, Bobby, that certainly in relation to the Virginia Tech shooting, but also if you guys look on Facebook, Chardon Public Schools, Chardon High School had their shooting. It's 10 years ago this year. They have a very active AC4P club who is doing
excellent.
some amazing things. And
That's excellent.
when you talk about PTSD, instead taking that and putting it towards post-traumatic growth, I mean, I think that's a prime example of how we could do that. So that's a great example how just not in the Virginia Tech community, but it's happening, you know, worldwide as well.
This has been a great almost hour together. And I tell you, I can't think of a better way to spend an hour, even on a Friday afternoon, than to really do what we've done here. It shows the nucleus of how we really can go to the next level. You know, I'd like to, Chrissy, thank you so much. And you're going to stay a vital part of our team, I can tell you, moving forward with AC4P in communities. And Scott Geller, I can't say enough about you. You know, it's been a great ride, but it's only just beginning. So we're going to really get out there and really make this happen across our communities. I'd like to say a special shout out to all of my friends at Yavapai College out in Arizona. I think we have a group that's joined us from Arizona. We have an active Arizona group. We have some staff and an office in Arizona, and we're just really pleased that we can move this, you know, even out to the halls of Yavapai and other colleges and communities across the country. Special shout out today to Chris Hannon, our lead technical provider, and our staff, my associate director, Iva Rody, and then special thanks to Terry Reynolds, who basically took care of just the notification and the flyers that she put out. And, you know, this was a team effort for our part, and it was our first webinar. And I just want to basically say it will not be our last. So thank you all. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at contact@solveviolence.com, and we will field your questions or any, you know, if you want to know more about, you know, AC4P policing, or you need to get in touch with Doc or Chrissy in any way, we would help facilitate that as well. So thank you all and happy Friday. Have a great weekend, and hopefully everybody stays safe. Thank you.